Hello, my name's Tom Carhill. It's Monday, the 21st of July 2014. I'm wearing a Balfour Beatty Ansaldo Systems t-shirt here because I was allegedly working for them, but I deal with that in other videos. This is simply me reading out for people's convenience, and it has some mistakes or some, it was a sort of second draft. This was what was sent though. This was what was termed a letter to act, which I sent to two people at Balfour Beatty. I sent them to a guy called Mike Fleming and Andrew McNaughton. And just so you've got all the details there. I don't know exactly what Mike's job was, but he was in the head office at Balfour Beatty PLC in England, and that's the firm that governs all of the Balfour Beatty subsidiaries everywhere else. And they confirm they do have oversight over all the subsidiaries everywhere. They are the head office, and they're not like the Woolworths, for instance, in England that closed down. There was a Woolworths in Germany, didn't close down. Woolworths in Australia didn't close down. None of the three companies have anything to do with each other, and they all sold different stuff, but they were all trading under the same brand. It's not a case of that. That's not how it works for Balfour Beatty. They ultimately answer to them, and Balfour Beatty PLC shareholders win or lose money as a result of these firms performing or not performing. So if you look at my other videos, you'll understand that if you are a Balfour Beatty PLC shareholder, the actions of Balfour Beatty staff on the ground in Malaysia on the double track project, which I've got here for Balfour Beatty and Ansaldo Systems, was very confusing, which made me realise that they were just stealing lots of money off the job. But what was more worrying was it seemed that the people in England were more keen to just ignore it and allow them to steal money from themselves. So, to be clear, I sent it to Mike Fleming at balfourbeatty.com, and that's one M. His email is mike.fleming, Fleming, at Balfour, that's BALFOUR, BEATTY.com, and his number was 0207 963 4217. The boss, the CEO of Balfour Beatty PLC, based in the UK in central London, was Andrew McNaughton. His email is ANDREW. Shut up! McNaughton, that's MCNAUGHTON at BEATTY.com, and his number was, or this is probably go to his secretary, 0207 216 6895. I forget what her name was, but when I phoned her, she said that Andrew's emails go to her, and she solicited this email to go to her. She wanted the report to go to her, so to go to him, if you like, at his email address. Yep, so he takes responsibility for it. Right, so this is a 12-page email. A 12-page report. An A4, sort of line and a half spaced, or no, about line and a half spaced, maybe, or maybe 1.5, 15, I think, maybe. I forget. But either way, just so you can have a little concept of what the format was, I just want to give you an idea. Every single page has headers and footers on it, and this is significant. And I just want to read out what the headers and footers are now. Now, I'm going to give you a link to where I'm going to upload this file onto the internet. So if you want to have a look at it, you can see it. You can see exactly what it is, and you can read through it. You had to print it off, that type of stuff. But that will be in the caption on the YouTube video. Right now, this is the thing. I want to explain this first. There's been a change in the legislation in England, and that means if you do any corruption on a foreign job, but you're linked to England, you can technically get deported even back to England and sent to prison potentially for breaking the law in another country, even though you wouldn't get sent to prison in that country necessarily. And also the people who are in England and have oversight, which of course, as I explained with the Woolworths analogy, Balfour Beatty PLC do, they have got a personal as opposed to a corporate responsibility to look into any criminal behaviour and make sure it doesn't happen. Now, Balfour Beatty PLC had posters plastered all over the Balfour Beatty Ansaldo Systems office and they were basically the exact same. They're basically Balfour Beatty UK type posters. So the impression, I mean, Ansaldo Systems was written on some of the headed papers, things like that. But it wasn't really. There was no Ansaldo Systems people there that I knew. It was all ex-Balfour Beatty people and people who'd just been contracted in. So basically, it was a run by Balfour Beatty job, completely run by Balfour Beatty. So I just wanted to make that clear. Right. So the thing is that the legislation I speak of is the 2010 Bribery Act, and that's the one that means that you've got to put in an anti-bribery policy because they consider it basically a certainty there will be bribery and corruption and financial crime in other jurisdictions if you don't do something to pre-remediate against it, sort of contingency, because it's going to happen if you don't do something. Put measures in place to make it much more difficult. You have to do one. Now, the people on the ground in Malaysia confirmed that they'd been on I believe they said a 3-day course all about this, but they hadn't done one. Now, this is both criminally and non-criminally, like diligently, irresponsible to the utmost, because the whole point is if you can do something criminal, you're best putting in a stupid procedure and just working around it. That's what a sensible criminal would do. If you weren't a criminal, you'd put in the procedure and you'd work to it and you'd diligently try not to have any bribery. These idiots haven't done either, so they haven't even made an effort to put one in. And they told me that on I believe it was my first or second day. I was allowed to know that. So that's why my suspicions started to get up when they didn't seem interested in putting one in place. Right, so without further ado, I'll get on with this reading out this which report I did. Now, right at the top, sorry, I need to explain this. There's an offence in England. I forget what act it's under. It's called tipping off. TIPPING space OFF. Tipping off. That's a criminal offence in England. So if you see financial crime and you tell somebody about it, who might, tell the people who are doing the crime, they can then cover it up. So you see, I had to be careful not to tip anybody off. I had to be careful of that. And I also had to put an anti-tipping off notice on it. But with it being that I didn't have the information to hand, the only people I could really tell were the head office. And I wanted to get some clarification off them. And it's very important for you to understand here that because I was very mindful of another bit of ridiculous legislation, which is tipping off, because that's basically it. It's ridiculous legislation, because how can you look into something without having some cooperation for someone in the firm if you're not in the office anymore? It's sort of impossible. It's just this ridiculous legislation. They're bringing lots of it in England at the minute, just to make everything completely confusing, so they can have anyone for anything and say they're a criminal, and they probably let 99.99% of the people who would just do it without even thinking in their everyday life off. But of course, you've got to remember that there's a world of difference between a PLC of a multinational company, the top man, a couple of the people in the head office know him, and people on the ground in Malaysia know him. Now, I had told people, the ones in Malaysia, that if they didn't pay me the money they owed me, I would be grassing them up for all of the criminal behaviour that I've found, and my suspicions that there was other stuff. So that's important to note. But it's also important to note that when I contacted Balfour Beatty in the UK, and you'll see this when you listen to what I've written, I made it very clear that I'd put enough information into my report to give them a pretext to go and investigate on the back of financial mismanagement and general mismanagement and inefficiency. So they could go over there, have someone go over there, look like a little spy, but they wouldn't be over there looking into criminal stuff from Balfour Beatty head office in Malaysia, and then they'd be going into Malaysia. They could be doing it on the pretext of there being inefficiency and just incompetence, because there's lots of that as well. And often the two things go hand in hand. Partly because you put stupid people in charge of stuff so you can blame them for things, because they never know what they're doing and they don't keep proper records and they're just a mess. And sometimes it's because you actually get someone to pretend to be a mess. But it's normally a bit of a mixture. Normally in competence of companies, it's a red flag. There's going to be some corruption going underneath it. Right. Okay, so this is what was sent to Mike Fleming and Andrew McNaughton to their emails, the emails that I explained, on the 17th of February 2014. Okay, so that's what I've sent right now. The header on the letter says is as follows. It's an anti-tipping off notice, right? Now this is the header. This is on every page, right? It says draft report on criminal behaviour and other seriously compromising misconduct on BBAS JV's Penang to Padang Besar double track project. BBAS stands for Balfour, Beatty, Ansaldo systems, yeah? And the double track project was the project to link Kuala Lumpur to Bangkok. There's two stages that have been the Kuala Lumpur to Penang, and now the Penang to Padang Besar part is the part that I was involved with, and then it will continue past Padang Besar. Padang Besar is, I forget if it's in the south of Thailand or the north of Malaysia. I forget where, or if it's in both. But either way, after that phase, it will be going into Thailand. Right, so I just want to make that clear. So that's what it was. So, draft report on criminal behaviour and other seriously compromising misconduct on BBAS JV's Penang to Padang Besar double track project. Also in the header, circulation beyond the two named individuals may constitute the criminal offence of tipping off. I'll just read that again because I don't want to read it each time, but I just want you to not have to think too hard following me. Circulation beyond the two named individuals may constitute the criminal offence of tipping off. Now this is where it starts proper. Email only. Mike.Fleming@balfourbeatty.com with his number. Andrew.McNaughton@balfourbeatty.com with his number. Dear Mike, regarding, this is the header, formal notification. Balfour Beatty PLC, in parentheses, BBPLC, has been seriously compromised, in parentheses, civilly, reputationally and criminally, by its own expat staff on at least one of the currently ongoing phases of the Penang to Padang Besar double track project. And in parentheses, the project. So from now on, whenever I say project, that is the project we're talking about. Part of the Kuala Lumpur to Bangkok double track project scheme. That's the end of the title. Further to our conversation of the 13th of February 2014, this is the note that you requested in support of my spoken explanation that, notwithstanding the other work practices which are seriously damaging to your BBPLC brand, there are serious, in capitals, criminal financial irregularities in operation on the project. Heading: brief note on my experience and expertise and experience. I am a first-hand witness to the facts which I report. I am a qualified quantity surveyor of 10 years experience, having a BSc quantity surveying degree. I was a MRICS, that's member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyor, card holder, but ceased paying the fees when the president of the organisation was caught doing tax fraud, and they covered it up, not even insisting that he step down. I have the Chartered Institute of Arbitration qualification. More specific to this case, I am, via various turns of fate, an expert in fraud and have substantial experience bringing actions in both civil and criminal capacities. There are currently 3 criminal cases which are ongoing, 2 in the UK and 1 in Australia, both worth tens of millions of pounds, which would not be happening if it were not for my working tirelessly, embarrassing the corrupt authorities to act. I am happy to elaborate upon request. I am writing as these idiot expat employees of one of your subsidiaries, BBAS, are not only acting criminally, but they are doing it in a very indiscreet manner. Then, they're treating those not in their clique badly, such as not paying them, as is what has happened with me. But there are other disgruntled employees and agents who mean that this is something of a which will jeopardise your ability to attain future phases of a very large rail upgrade project. This is not intended to be a comprehensive report. I am sure to state where I suspect and why, what I know and what I can prove. What I can prove here and now, and what I can prove with access to the existent or provably absent, due to having been deliberately destroyed by BBS on-site systems data. Of course, circumstantial evidence often brings peculiarities to light, and often the lack of something that would normally happen or be in place is where deeper truths can often be found. Heading: Whistleblowing versus excellent opportunity to exploit. During our conversation, Mike mentioned me having whistleblown on the site in Malaysia, thus having been told to leave and then not paid and not having had anything in writing as a result. In case this was not totally put straight over the phone, whilst it is certainly true that queries that I made in private to Graham Donald, who was his job title was commercial manager, he'd be my line manager. Sorry, queries that I made in private to Graham Donald regarding irregularities certainly caused this to happen. I never sought to blow any whistle, and inquiring as to the protocols to adhere to the law, this was not the same thing. Whistleblowing is a dangerous, gainless idiot's pursuit, which destroys employment prospects. Likewise, I am not whistleblowing here. I'm letting you know what the situation is in Malaysia, that you might have some time to imagine a solution whereby you transparently cut out the cancer and remedy the situation, whilst maintaining a semblance of control and minimise damage to the project, BBPLC and BBAS's reputation. This house cleaning exercise, if managed correctly, can be used to promote BBPLC's reputation. Anti-corruption is the issue in Thailand, especially the south of Thailand, where the next phase of the project is due to happen, and it's no small bit of work. Heading: Anti-tipping off notice. This notification is made in accordance with my legal obligations under UK and Malay law. Whilst I appreciate that it is logistically difficult to accommodate, I hasten to warn you of the challenges associated with the UK's criminal offence of tipping off, which have primacy over any company policy or interest of your group. I urge you to familiarise yourselves with this factor when considering your inquiries. I urge you to familiarise yourselves with this factor when conducting your inquiries. I am aware that there is one lawyer working, at least in part, for Balfour, Beatty and Ansaldo Systems I'll read the whole thing. Balfour, Beatty and Ansaldo Systems JV SDN BHD. That's limited company type thing in Malaysia. And Ansaldo Systems is ANSALDO. Ansaldo Systems, big company. And that's BBAS from now on. Who's based in Kuala Lumpur. Who is a Balfour Beatty employee, but I'm fairly certain that discussing this with him would be considered a criminal offence. His name is Julian, second name unknown. Sorry, I'll just read this again. I'm aware that there is one lawyer working, at least in part, for BBAS in Kuala Lumpur, but I'm fairly certain that discussing this with him would be considered a criminal offence. His name is Julian, second name unknown, just to paraphrase, just because I stopped quite a bit there. Heading: Personal information. I consider the offending individuals, which I don't pretend to have a comprehensive list of, who are on the project are a rogue criminal gang. As such, whilst I don't mind giving you both my contact details, I will not be happy if any of them are passed to them. Mobile phones and IP addresses can be tracked very easily by criminals, and I'm in a dangerous country which is in the middle of a revolution, which means there is an element of danger to me alerting you to my or our concerns. Further, I would like to remind you that Malaysia has similar laws to our Data Protection Act, where all personal data can be retrieved and it is illegal to use it improperly. On the other hand, it is obtainable, so destroying it is illegal here, and I am entitled to have it. So if it's destroyed, then this will be discoverable upon my request. Shut up! I urge you to carefully restrict access or transmission of this and any other report recommending and any other report. Shut up! Recommending that you seek my prior written permission before any access is granted, which does include bent lawyers who think that they can ignore the law. Heading: Not unforeseen ramifications. Suspect expat staff who I was most closely associated with are Graham Donald, commercial manager, my boss; Adam Stewart, Graham's boss, maybe other duties on project or on other projects; and Conrad Fawcett, boss of project, Adam Stewart's boss. Definitely Graham, I'm certain Adam, and slightly less certain of Conrad, are incumbent expats from the UK who have been working on similar jobs in Malaysia for a long time, with families and children in school there. It wasn't here because I was in Thailand when I was writing this, you understand. That's where I was, the country of the revolution, if you look at the dates. Yeah, with children at school there, etc. Publication and rumours of corruption or horrendous incompetence being discovered will destroy any chances of them ever getting on any large-scale government-funded jobs there again, and they'll presumably be totally ruined by it, having to go to even worse places to work. None of the three are management material. Graham's not got any overt personality problem, but definitely Adam has. I'll put an apostrophe and an S after. I don't know, but definitely Adam has. That was a mistake. Being a loudmouth know-nothing who keeps bellowing things out to create a surprisingly well-subscribed illusion that he is important and masterful. Overt criminal behaviour. This extended to shouting that he wanted the security guards to know that if anything else went missing, he'd burn them to death in their security hut. This particular outburst was in front of an entire open plan office, the Bukit Tengah office that was, and that's just off. Penang's an island, it's just off that, but they call it Penang. It's the sort of state of Penang in Malaysia. He didn't mean for it to be a joke. Conrad's very anxious, hysterically snapping at people for saying hello to him, again in front of an entire workforce in an open plan office, and can't handle any degree of pressure. Other incidents of telegraphed weakness were common in the 1 or 2 times I saw him, and were twinned with an equally unappealing and totally inappropriate sarcasm and smirking, which I witnessed when he'd invited Balfour Beatty Rail Sweden, BBAS, to attend the office in Malaysia from Sweden to sort out the remaining money owed to them, which he proceeded to tell them that he couldn't agree after all, as there was a board that needed to be consulted and that he was not going to pay them according to their agreed fixed price, as he wanted to look into their accounts as well as have them substantiate where they got their fixed price from, smirking all the time. Consider how many times you've raised your voice in work and what the general thinking is on people who can't control their temper. I've certainly never raised my voice, as it shows weakness. These type of people can only be relied upon to compromise your wider group and destroy any perception of a team mentality. Heading: Compromise trainees and determination techniques. Termination technician, sorry. Heading: Compromise trainees and the termination technicians. There were around 10 trainees from Loughborough University. Some were in construction-related courses. 2 were on RICS, that's our Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, RICS, accredited QS courses, quantity surveying courses. They were all being badly taken advantage of. In the instance of QS students, they had been told that their RICS diary could be signed off, but no one at BBAS was qualified, so that was a lie, because they'd have to be an RICS accredited member to be able to sign their diary off, that is. So that was a lie, so they'd been tricked into attending a hardship location only to be paid £10 a day, £1 per hour for 10 hours, Lodgings were included, and a share of a car, to be precise. They were not long having been there, and from what I noticed, were all consumed doing pointless exercises that had no final aim, and they weren't learning anything. They were not only being trained into a culture of doing nothing and having no accountability or interest in their work, they were loose-lipped about various things which technically could land them in trouble. Overt criminal behaviour. Included in this was their assurances that the ex-police security boss had been hired to ease any problems with the police by bribing them, and it helped with other aspects of cutting corners. I'll just read that again. So, they were not only being trained into a culture of doing nothing and having no accountability or interest in their work, they were loose-lipped about various things which technically could lend them criminal trouble. Overt criminal behaviour. Included in this was their assurances that the ex-police security boss had been hired to ease any problems with the police by bribing them, and it helped with other aspects of cutting corners. The courses in Loughborough didn't attract the same calibre as John Moores. That's Liverpool John Moores. I went to John Moores. So I think it's the best one in the country. Some people, South Bank has some good ones, but these were more like namby-pamby, like something like sycophant types. They're not like proper grown. They're not like proper grown-ups like the ones you get out of John Moores mainly. Anyway, they're not all good from John Moores. They're generally high quality, definitely. Sorry, the courses in Loughborough didn't attract the same calibre as John Moores. There can be no doubt. But I nonetheless intend to do something to remedy their situation when I chased up what I am owed. For a start, they need to be paid a substantial amount more, and where in the case of the QSs there is no one who's appropriately experienced to teach them anything since I left, the concept of there being a RICS training course is actually totally fraudulent. Another worrying thing that I noticed is that they all seem to know that the technicians imported to do the terminations were charging £400 a day. That's their charge out rate, the firm, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Shut up! A fact which incensed them. However, more worrying is that they thought that the technicians shouldn't get so much, as opposed to seeing that they were getting paid way too little and were being made total idiots of. I pulled one of them up on his criticism of his colleagues, who I'll note had displayed concern that the trainees were being abused. So these people getting lots of money were telling these trainees to sort themselves out and stop being such mugs. Yeah, they were. And some of them were laughing at them. They can't believe what you're doing. Because they just weren't catching on to it. Citing once the boy, always the boy. I pulled them up on this on the criticism of their colleagues, who I'll note had displayed concern that the trainees were being abused, citing once the boy, always the boy, etc., and that the more money that his colleague got paid, the more money he would generally stand to make. He said that it was bollocks and that I had a shit attitude. So I was trying to help him, and that's what he said. He got very angry. He became venomously angry at me. Obviously, this is exactly the kind of attitude people being abused often take, as they're in denial, so I don't hold it against him. Next paragraph. Overt criminal behaviour. None of them saw that clearly the story about them not being able to pay them better and then having one of their mates provide all of these overpriced for the region technicians at huge expense was inconsistent. Definitely they didn't seem to think they'd spelled out an underlying criminal motive, with there never having been any competitive tender to take them on board. They also appeared to believe that the propagated myth that the locals were totally useless and couldn't do anything properly, despite the fact that they were being supervised by UK staff who would generally be responsible, was just a racist policy in order to create a fairy story to allow for corruption to occur. From what I understood, there were between 75 and 100 of these technicians. It was rumoured that their boss got 25%, £100. It was more than rumoured, everybody was just constantly telling me it's a fact. Out of the charge out rate. That means he would be making £10,000 per day for doing absolutely nothing. While this was technically done via his company, I read the offer letter. It looked like it had been written by a foreigner. The man, who I don't know, was clearly semi-literate at best, but it got worse. 2 clauses were incredibly poorly written. One about insurance guaranteed to cover the client for anything they wanted them to. An insurance policy that doesn't exist. The second clanger, which I immediately noticed, was something about agreeing to do anything that was contracted and anything else that the client wanted. I forget the wording and appreciate that my explanation doesn't show how uneducated and compromising the phraseology was for all concerned. In case it needs to be said, the money being paid to the company, aka one of their mates, is totally at odds with anything aligned with proper practice, and I am certain will not all remain in his pocket. Possibly this money will be retrievable from MC Gamuda, which is the big Chinese company who Balfour BBAS are working for, who they're contracted to the government, not BBAS. So, possibly this money will all be retrievable by MC Gamuda, if they turn a blind eye to this dubiousness, as it may be that they will be able to fudge the figures and claim it from the Malay government. I kept hearing it called acceleration. When taken alongside the lies told to me about not having the finance to pay the going rate, the lies told to the students about funding, the low going rate paid to the local staff, and the non-payment of BBAS, that's Balfour Beatty Rail Sweden, board or no board, there can be no doubt that this non-competitivity tendered misappropriation of BBAS funds for workers to undertake repetitive, semi-skilled tasks under close supervision, for which training was supplied. It is clearly totally bent. Right, that's the end of that.